All right, welcome everybody. Finance Committee meeting here September 7th here at the Cotter Room. First, I want to introduce new members to the team here. So over here we've got Marty, and we've got Sarah here, new members, first meeting tonight. So thank you guys for volunteering to become a part of the team here. Really appreciate it.
Welcome.
It's like a perfect timing too. It worked out really well, so really appreciate having you guys. For guests tonight, originally on the agenda we had Andrew and Scott. Andrew will not be able to make it here tonight, so all we have is Scott, which I know we're kind of disappointed about. So we've got Scott here. Some of the agenda items that we'll cover, specifically Scott will walk through the draft articles. Everybody here was provided that for review prior to the meeting. He'll also update us on the draft capital plan. We'll also touch base, Scott, on a conversation we had about invitations for liaisons to meet with you and the town department heads prior to meetings, so we'll get through that. Vader accounting software, we'll have to wait for another meeting that we had Andrew. The goal there is to provide a statistician or maybe data analyst or maybe another title that we come up with since we're not confined to that now. But give them read-only access to the accounting system so they can kind of poke around in there too. I wanted to just touch base with the team on the Board of Selectmen vote not to reduce the quorum requirements. I think that's really important for us to keep in mind when we go into the town meeting, special town meeting, knowing that we need 150 folks versus the 75 that we needed before. So with that, let's try to encourage family, friends, and other registered active voters to show up to that. Conversation around adopting the Finance Committee handbook. I sent that all to everybody. That was actually a suggestion from Paul. So Paul, I'd look for, once we get to that point, for you to kind of lead the way there. 160 pages. I did not read all of them. I did kind of skim through it. But I do like the idea of a Massachusetts committee group, finance committee group, and a handbook kind of guiding us on the path that we're on. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on Joe Rojas and then Russ have left the committee, the finance committee. So they I think combined are 8 years of service to the committee. Is that right? About 8 years combined. So I really enjoyed having those guys here in the short time that I've been on the committee. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. So I want to thank them for all the time that they've spent with us. So, with that, before I toss it over to Scott, does anybody have anything they want to add or comments on the agenda? Okay, cool. Scott, the floor is yours.
All right, so I guess we'll start with the special town meeting draft warrant. The request from Andrew Nocum, the finance director, to have this special town meeting is directly related to the fact that we have some monies, unrestricted government aid, and some money from marijuana revenues that were in excess of what we had predicted. So it's a good thing. But if we do also have some issues with some of our budgets and some housekeeping to do, it'd be good to get this done before we set the tax rate, and we can actually use that money to take care of these issues. So the first one is supplementing the building department budget. I won't have the dollar numbers on most of these, or some of these issues, particularly this one, until Andrew gets back. But we expect it to be somewhere around $40,000, and again, it would come out of probably the unrestricted government aid or one of those revenue numbers. This is because we had gone over a year or so, I guess, without a building commissioner. We finally, we had a few in-house candidates we were hoping would get certified, and we were expecting those in-house candidates to maybe take the position. It didn't work out. We ended up going outside. There's approximately a dozen municipalities looking for building commissioners right now, certified building commissioners. Are not a lot of them. So, we ended up paying the market rate, which is more than we actually had predicted. And then there were a few other issues in that department as far as software and some other budget issues. So we want to take advantage of it and just get it all straightened out. Our other option, if we do not go through special town meeting, is to be some sort of a line item transfer at the end of the year to make good for it. But it would be better to do it before we set the tax rate. This enterprise fund appropriation revision, Andrew had explained it a bit, and it's not really a change to anything, but there was just the way that we had called it out in the town meeting last year. When we had set their budget, there was $91,400 of retained earnings that was supposed to be used as part of that budget. And we, I think, just sort of allocated a full budget amount without saying that $91,400 were coming from retained earnings. So again, this is more of a housekeeping thing.
Can I ask you, Scott, on that?
Absolutely.
So as far as, so this is related to the budget for cable.
Yep.
Does the Cable Advisory Committee, do they review the budget?
They submit the budget.
So
Yeah.
have they approved this?
They don't have this was sort of part of the original plan. It's just that we didn't word it exactly like this.
We didn't give the
We
breakdown.
Yeah, we
Right.
didn't
We didn't-
specify
But-
where the money was coming from, whether it was yearly income or retained. We just said this is the money that they have in their budget.
Right, but what's their role as far as related to this and approving?
We wouldn't go back and ask them for approval. We have no choice but to clean this up.
They make
I mean, we
their own
can,
budget.
and we certainly can make them aware of it. I would assume that Andrew has, but if not.
Yeah, can we
will.
just make sure that they're aware of it?
Absolutely.
Because if it's their budget, they should know what's going on in their budget.
Well, it will have zero impact, other than, like I said, cleaning it up. It's
Right.
basically was the intent of it, but I will make
Okay.
sure they're aware.
Yeah, just to clear up, if it's okay with the chair.
Please.
This was really more an issue with the wording of the warrant article at annual town meeting, not with their budget. The warrant article didn't specify that $280 or so thousand was coming from their yearly earnings and 90 was coming from essentially their savings.
But they are the ones that
But
decide.
they were the
that.
ones that set the amount and set where, like, knew how much they're getting in earnings and how much they were taking from their savings. So
Right,
they
it wasn't
definitely,
just like,
they definitely know that.
Right.
It's, this was just, we didn't specify on the warrant at annual town meeting the two different places the money was coming from, so we're doing this to clarify that.
But to your point, if, we'll make sure that we're aware that we are making it or
because
doing
do
it.
they typically use retained earnings?
I don't think that they typically have retained earning. I think it was just something that had happened during that transfer period. But
I think that at least for the last couple of years, they have used
well, I think
money
that, I
from their
guess,
retained earnings, but they have, as we've discussed before, they have close to $1 million in their retained earnings account, so.
that's a different.
Different account.
That's a
It's like
different.
That's more
Okay.
like a
Yeah.
savings account, and then they have an account for the, I believe it's like
Yeah.
an overages, that
Okay,
they
Yeah.
use as retained, or that this is coming from.
okay.
And I think Andrew will give you a much better, cleaner, but yeah, so essentially, we predict, they tell us what they feel their operating will be, and they'll meet with this group. We know fairly close what the fee is going to be that we're going to collect from Comcast and Verizon. Their operating's typically right in that. But there were first couple of years where it was lower, there were retained earnings, and we were rolling them over. And they did want to use them, but we didn't word it properly. So I think this just cleans all that up. But again,
But I think it's a good point too, that just that they're.
They should be-
Yeah, they should
they should-
know
yeah.
that you shouldn't be sitting in the audience and find out that, you know.
we're
oh,
cleaning up
but They're taking care of an issue that has to do with my department.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a.
so I'll double check with Andrew that they are up to speed on it.
And also, like, take note for us to, for the next town meeting, to have it worded, the right way.
Yep.
Prior to.
So is it the wording, but don't you have to associate dollars with that wording?
So my understanding, it was associated, it just wasn't worded correctly in the article.
So it
Oh,
was
so
a
those
larger
two
lump
pieces-
sum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the retained earnings was in the
The number.
verbiage.
Not in the
Not
verbiage,
yet.
but
No,
in
we
the,
didn't
but
specify.
in the dollar amount.
It was in the full dollar amount that we had allocated, but we
So the
never
two
said
pieces were
that,
there?
we never said X amount is coming out of this account, and this 91,400 is coming from retained earnings. We just appropriated or through their
Total.
total, yeah,
So
their,
their total budget is blah, blah,
but again, I
without
think
giving the breakout.
Andrew can give you a much better explanation since he's the one who decided we had to fix it.
Okay.
The account consolidation article, again, that one, police, fire, library, they all have their own accounts for fuel oil, different things like that, gas, utilities, really. I think what we did at some point is we consolidated all the electric utility bills, and Andrew would like to do that just for accounting ease. With other things, again, we also discussed we'd be able to pull those numbers out separately for this committee to get a realistic view of what, the actual expenses to each independent department. But for ease of purposes, we need town meeting to approve it, to consolidate it on the books.
I'm glad we're doing that. It's been discussed for several
Has it?
years, yeah. Just to make it easier.
It's a big deal to
Budget-wise.
them and the accounting office, so.
But what does town meeting approve? Do they approve these utilities in the general budget or in the specific department budget?
Town meeting will approve just the general budget. So they'll see,
But what
a
gets-
line item for utilities, but they're not gonna see it, and they typically wouldn't see it anyways.
So if this follows the way it did with electricity, what gets presented for the total budget at town meeting is not, like, we go over, when we get the budget, we go over each individual line within each department. That is not presented at town meeting. What's presented at town meeting are the individual departments and their budgets.
Right, with
So
expense and salary.
the departments in that will look a little bit different on expense next year, because the utilities essentially will be all in one place. So there's one place that will look higher and everywhere else will look a little bit lower at town meeting.
But we'll still have access to kind of true that number up.
This, we did talk with Andrew about, will we still have the ability to parse it out per department to get a true sense for this board on exactly what the costs would be associated with each department.
So why these accounts? So you've got copying, printing, small amounts. And you look at, why just these accounts? Why isn't he looking at other accounts? To do the
Like the
consolidation?
general expenses,
Yeah, because isn't that what we basically doing? We're taking it out of these
Yeah.
department budgets, putting it in the town. Are there other accounts that we should be looking at to do that?
that'd be a good question for Andrew, but I wouldn't think so. I don't know.
Maybe just Andrew seeing if he can get us, everybody to be on board with this, and then he'll move on to that next one.
But he's doing it, might as well do it all at once.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff, like office supplies and stuff, is very specific and very,
No, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about that, but, because what's he talking about?
he's talking
Postage?
about,
Is he talking about postage?
I don't know if he's talking
I
about
don't
postage,
think-
he's talking about heating gas,
And what's
Yeah,
driving?
probably
this?
gas, driving gas, probably.
Probably would need to write one check instead of 15.
I would think he'd be wanting to put those two in there. I know he's got electricity in there.
I
To,
thought I saw it listed out
I
somewhere.
think he did in his initial email last week, or last meeting.
Or,
Yeah, it was
before the
heating,
last meeting.
gasoline and postage.
I don't even remember postage being part of it.
That was
Yeah.
on one of the sheets.
Yep.
Is there any cost savings associated with that because we're buying in bulk?
No, I mean, we're already purchasing in bulk, we all sort of, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I
But
don't
even like
expect-
office supplies, like, you know.
Well, that's all bulk also. I mean, everybody does it, but it's off of a consortium
Gotcha.
list, so we all get the same
Same
purchasing
discount.
power, yeah.
Okay, okay.
All right, the sewer force main, again, these engineering costs, you know, it had trickled into the next fiscal year. Well, I think Andrew said we'll probably see one more bill, maybe at the annual also associated with the sewer force main. So, again, this is just finishing up that project.
And just for at home, this is in no way associated with the PFAS or anything like that, all that?
This,
is
no,
completely
this
unrelated.
is just, yeah, this was just that giant force main that we ran up Summer Street and all the way up into Brockton.
So Scott, I think I asked this last meeting, but did we know this amount was coming and we didn't budget for it for the annual? Like, I can't remember what
No, because I know we did budget, we
what the
did some money at the
question, because
annual,
we
so I
had, we
think that this
definitely
was
had
just.
money for the sewer main, the force main project.
Yeah.
So,
I think these were just more engineering costs. Initially, like, the engineering, any engineering costs weren't allowed to be rolled into the, they got we got I think the Clean Water Act, we got funds from that to help offset the construction, but engineering costs couldn't go into it, so we've been on the hook all along for the engineering costs.
Was this part of the deal that John had worked out with the city of Brockton, to increase our?
No, this
Is that-
isn't,
no,
this
okay.
was just replacing that
Okay,
line
just-
because the line kept deteriorating. So, which was a great deal that John did get us with Brockton, and this will get the stuff there.
Absolutely, yeah, well, I know,
But-
yeah.
But, yeah, and actually, a lot of other cities and towns have been having similar issues with this similar product too, I believe. I know we had it over in Whitman, we're going through the same thing on Route 14, running a whole new force main up to Brockton. Everybody heard about what happened in Plymouth with their force main. The pipes are just deteriorating.
what's the source?
It was acids or
No,
whatever.
sorry, source for the money.
Yeah,
If we're making money on acid, something
we'll
else is
find out from, we'll find out from Andrew on that one when he gets here next week. But that's why we put in here sort of the kitchen sink appropriate transfer from available funds.
Yep.
The land purchase for community preservation, I really can't talk about. Hopefully I'll be able to, it's just a placeholder. Maybe next week I can discuss it. The payment of the prior year bill, again, Andrew had mentioned that, there was outstanding prior year bills with, I think the company's ClearGov. They work with Wayne in IT, and they provide some services to them. Apparently, for whatever reason, we're sending their bills through the mail. And,
Like snail mail?
yeah,
Oh.
and so, in the conversation with Wayne today, it wasn't a lot of money, it may amount to $1,000 or so, but there were some prior bills that had never made it, never got paid. When Wayne had looked back to try and figure it out, you know, we kind of realized that they were missing. So apparently they have decided that it would be best for them to email the bills. So that's what they're going to do in the future. But he was working to get the final figure on that and get it to Andrew, and we should have that number to plug in. Again, like I said, I think it's $1,000 or somewhere in that area.
So typically for prior year bills, at the all-town meeting, don't we pay off whatever snow and ice was from the previous year?
Snow and ice, we always do, and there's usually something that's lingering.
So we're gonna add snow and ice to this?
No, we haven't got it yet.
Okay,
Yeah, so that, we had, like, this is, we haven't done that yet. We
So-
have, that's the snow and ice that's coming up. We're
coming
gonna
up,
do.
okay, gotcha.
That maybe we won't have
There,
to.
CSNA.
there will be a special despite us having a special town meeting in the fall, there will still be a special town meeting in the spring before the annual
Well,
town
you know what
meeting.
it turns out, is that we don't have to do that. That we can actually just say it's a prior year bill and have the motion to that, rather than actually, we just got, yeah, it was kind of, some guidance just recently came out on that, that nobody's actually sure why everybody was always doing that. So,
The whole special town meeting.
which is typical of a Massachusetts town meeting,
Or just
right?
the.
No, just holding that
just the-
special in the
okay.
annual.
Like you don't actually have to do, you don't have to do the special to close out. the
No,
previous year
I guess as
stuff,
long
and
as you
then-
just refer to it as the prior year's bill
Oh,
and vote on it, you don't have to go through the formalities, so,
wow,
yeah,
that'll save us a good 4 minutes.
yeah. Right?
Another reason people to turn out.
Yeah.
I know,
We're
we're
moving these.
gonna
things
miss that
along.
pomp and circumstance, though. It's making it easier on the new chair.
Yes, it is. You got it easy, Daniel.
This transfer of land to conservation, so these were parcels of land, for the most part, they were in the surplus property list, and the selectmen have already voted, and the Conservation Commission has already voted that they would like these to have a conservation restriction for purposes, you know, of open space and stuff in perpetuity. This language probably has to change once Greg Corbo gets, our attorney, gets to look at it. But basically, these parcels are all, this 0 Chestnut Street parcel is the one that we have that's up under the high tension wires over by 500 Chestnut, the industrial park, but it's also abuts the properties that are owned by a religious group and right across the street from Ames Knoll, and it is sort of a connector to Holbrook, which is just hundreds of acres of conservation land there. The two 0, or I guess the 4 Oakland Road parcels are actually up in the Blueberry Hill Conservation Area. They're not part of that current conservation area, but they are right up in there, that's on a paper road, and they would sort of connect to that. So these are other, you know, really good parcels to put into that restriction. The 0 Rockland Street parcel, as you're coming around on Rockland, just after the fire station, heading, you know, up towards Holbrook, you'll see there's a sort of a little cedar swamp there. That parcel of land actually comes over towards this campus. So this would be a, you know, another great piece to preserve and protect and put into conservation. 251 Rockland is also, in 0 Rockland, all 3 of those are actually up together, that make up that one big parcel. So these were all something that, again, Open Space Committee looked at it. There's the possibility of getting some nice trails in there. It's like, especially that Rockland Street one that, you know, sort of ties into the campus here. But all of them were recommended for it. And I think certainly the Chestnut Street one is identified in the master plan also.
So what does it run behind Lowe's?
It's a little further because I think it's probably more behind the apartments that run behind Lowe's.
Oh, okay.
Because then it
Yeah,
kind of
that's
curves
for close-
around.
okay.
Yeah. But it would connect to that property that's directly even behind the apartments. And then there's the other property that we just purchased, or we have the agreement, the Butler property. So again, it's sort of creating this, there's probably only 1 or 2 other parcels in there that would bring it all the way around over to the bandstand area. And then it, you know, it just sort of incorporates all that, and then, you know, it opens up the possibility of trails that would, you know, maybe even go out to Orchard Lane in that area. So this is sort of the final piece of it. We were hoping that we didn't have to go to town meeting, but we do.
Would 0 Chestnut Street, wasn't there discussion about certain properties at Ames Knoll that belong to the town that were gonna be transferred to DCR? Is that?
On the opposite side of the street from this, there's a
Okay.
piece of land known as the Pochecki Farm. Pochecki sound right?
Oreki.
Horeki, and we've been trying to clean up the title on that so we could take it, and but the only survivors are in Russia. So it's been going through tax title, but eventually, it's been a long process. When we do have it, that's the plan, is just make it part of Ames Knoll.
Okay, so that's not this parcel.
But that's not this
Yep,
parcel.
okay.
And then the final one, the collective bargaining, we're not really there with Abington Fire or Abington Police, but we are there with DPW, so we'll have a number for that probably next meeting. But I don't think we'll have numbers for the other ones. We'll keep it as a placeholder. So I may ask you to vote the number prior to the meeting, or we may not get there and it'll wait till the annual.
When will the, contracts up?
July 1.
July.
So they will be, all of them are retro to July 1.
Thanks, Scott. So with that, though, in order to have our recommendations in time, the committee will have to meet next Wednesday.
Yep.
And so if there are any, do you think there'll be any additions to this, aside from?
If they can track me down by Monday, maybe. The only, I don't anticipate any additions. I mean, somebody could bring the AB up until, I'm assuming we're gonna close it Monday night. It'll be on the agenda. We could get a citizen petition for something. I'm not expecting anything. Andrew may find one other housekeeping thing that may end up on here, but again, I've talked to him a bit. I don't think so. But whatever it is, again, this is stuff that, we have revenue, we have newer revenue, the unrestricted government aid money, so there is money there that we're not asking to take this from anywhere else, so.
So just so everybody knows, we'd want to get our questions out, if there are any, on these articles today, best that we can, without Andrew being here, so that way we can have a.
Yeah, I think if anybody, hopefully on tomorrow, I'm gonna give Andrew a little time to catch up, but feel free to reach out to him too, if you wanna, any other clarification, or through you, we can get him, I'm sure he'll be here next week.
Okay.
And we'll all hammer him.
Very good.
How confident are you that we'll have exact numbers to plug in
I think the only ones that we.
by Wednesday?
I
for
think
us
the
to make
only,
recommendations?
the only ones is probably collective bargaining. DPW I'll have, but I think we'll have exact numbers on everything else,
Okay.
certainly by Wednesday. And actually, he may be able to do it tomorrow or the next day, maybe something that I can email out to everybody with a cleaner copy of this,
That'd be great.
And the revenues too, because you're saying that we're not gonna have to use any of the reserves or the
Nope.
freeze of
No, we'll have the funding sources in here, and
cash.
we'll give you a breakdown. Like I said, the unrestricted government aid was up, I want to say there's an additional $50,000 in there. So that's where probably the bulk of this will come from.
Okay.
And that's by having this before the end of the month and before the tax rate is set, that's how we're actually able to use the money. If we waited after the tax rate, then we couldn't, that would just end up being free cash, and we would deal with it as part of our capital.
But even the
Not a segue, but-
232,000, there's 232,000 in here. Where's that coming from?
John it's probably retained earnings, sewer earnings.
Oh, it's the sewer. All
Yeah.
right, never mind.
Yeah,
Their
The sewer
enterprise
pays
fund.
for themselves.
they're enterprise, yeah. So it won't be out of the general fund or
Yes,
anything like
yeah.
that.
All right, any other
So-
questions?
So does that, similar to the cable, does that $232,000 expense get reviewed by the sewer commission?
My guess is the sewer commission brought this to our attention, since it's their bill. Yeah.
It's their bill, right, but it's been approved by, like, what's the
Yes.
process of?
They do. So they'd go over the budget, just like he goes over the town's budget, and they'll decide, like, we absolutely have to do these upgrades, or we absolutely need this, and then that board, like, votes that budget.
Okay, so we would have minutes to support the review of and approval of this $232,000.
I would imagine if we ask for them, we can get that.
Okay. Because I'm just a little uncomfortable approving something that a board that's responsible for this hasn't looked at, and then we approve it. And they haven't taken their responsibility to do it. I'm not saying they didn't, but it just seems like they need to be out in front of it before it would come to us. Because why would we approve something that they haven't?
Well, they presented it to you, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming this came from John Stone, the sewer commissioner. So I'm
Right, but
assuming
does
it
it-
came through his board.
Right, yeah, there's an elected
Yeah.
board that reviews that stuff.
I mean, it's not so much that we're approving anything, right? We're giving our
recommending.
recommendation. And I mean, based on where we know the funds are coming from, we can almost defer to them.
But it's coming from the,
Their enterprise.
Coming from their money.
right,
Which is our money that you've paid
Sewer
into
user
the
fees.
system.
right, but the
If
town
we use the
accountant
bathroom.
is bringing it forward. It's not like saying
you
this is
don't.
coming from the sewer commission, or this is coming from the town accountant.
Right.
So when it says, for me, if it comes to the town accountant, who above the town accountant has looked at this and approved it? From a governance standpoint.
I think we can just confirm that.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I'll ask John Stone to confirm it for us.
All right, well, I think we missed your segue, although I heard it was pretty good.
You like that?
Yeah. We can transition over into the capital
Yeah.
plan.
So I haven't emailed you a copy of this yet, and I think if anybody has seen this on the table, you'll see why I haven't emailed it to you yet, because it's a lot. It's good. What I've been doing this week is, so this capital plan, this is a new long-term capital plan. We've been working with the Collins Center, which is a group out of UMass, Boston, and it's they sort of help us, or help government and municipalities with different things. In this particular one, and this was through a grant, they helped us put together our long-term capital plan. And what they did is they initiated interviews with all of the departments and the department heads and said, okay, what do you see as your big needs over the next X amount of years? And they put all that together. And then they kind of go back and they met with Sonia at the time to talk about, how we fund things, and, looked at the way that Abington historically has done stuff, and then, they look at, what our sort of free cash situation is or whatever. But ultimately, they've gone back and forth, and they've sort of prioritized some of the projects with the department heads. They come back to me, prioritize it. And what we're at the process now is a final meeting between me and the department heads. I met with a few of them today, with school, police, fire. I met with the senior center, IT. And basically, we just kind of took a look, especially at the 2024 and 2025 asks, and said, okay, other things in there that, are a priority, should be pushed off, could be pushed off, want to take care of right away, or things that are missing. And the things that I've noticed are the things that are missing more than what's in there. There's never really been an exhaustive survey on all the buildings here. So I did one recently on this building. But this building is 20-something years old. The library is 20-something years old. As you know, we're throwing in a new roof on that that we funded at last year's town meeting. And things are starting to go wrong. And we did an envelope assessment of this building, and we know that, we need about $200,000 worth of windows. We do need some roof repair. We need to take care of some issues on the brick veneer. Library, again, it was the roof. Overall, we want to look at the HVAC systems. We had two of our units down in this building, and we're thinking one of them probably has to be replaced. Same thing over at the senior center. None of those issues had made it to this capital plan. And the problem is because nobody knows. I mean, we have department heads who are in charge of buildings who, shouldn't be expected to be facilities managers. A police chief shouldn't have to know what's going on with this HVAC system, you know, any more than the librarian or the library director, or, you know, in this building, we're fortunate that our IT director is also our facilities person. So things like that, you know, where it's easy to keep up with the maintenance and understand what those costs are, we're missing some of those bigger things that are coming up. And we can know that if that library roof for $900,000 is going to be replaced this year, the roof on this building's probably not far away. You know, will it be another 4 or 5 years? Probably, but it has to make its way into this plan. So those are kind of the things that I picked up on today, was it just that we need to sharpen the pencil a little bit on those. For the most part, they did get everything in here, and it's a really good draft. It does need some work. I did collapse a few of the headers in here, or a few of the columns. Me running for president. Just so, you know, to make it a little bit easier to see. But I'm going to scroll down to the bottom first, just to show you the different tabs.
Does anybody want to look at this, print out of it?
I'd love to, but I don't know that I could see it.
You want to?
I said I'd love to, but I don't know that even
Oh,
with my
yeah, I know.
glasses, I don't think I can see it.
Anybody?
You wanna try?
Might be easier for you.
We'll see how good your glasses are.
And again, I'll email it to you, but again, you know, there's already some things that I found like today and yesterday that we want to take out of the plan, things that we realize that we don't actually have to do. Some things that we've been able to do with the ARPA funding, so we don't have to worry about it in this plan. So the first tab that you'll see is the financial. Toggle between the two. So this is our summary of financial, you know, showing, you know, where our debt is and unissued debt, things like that. They seem to, and I really need to have Andrew here to kind of go over this, but it seems when they come down here to where you see the description and the sort of the general fund pay-as-you-go cash funded, and then annual debt service. This is where I have to review it more with the Collins Center, but from what I understand is their idea when putting this together was that we would pay as we go. So we're not borrowing, and we're also making it a sort of a percentage of our operating budget. So we're actually trying to calculate our revenue a lot closer, as opposed to where when we sort of calculate our revenue now, we try to be very conservative, tends to create that free cash, and that free cash is what we end up using. So they'd rather, and their philosophy is to be a lot closer on that. And this is a discussion that we're going to have with Andrew and this group to decide exactly, you know, what our policy or our
Which way we want to go.
method will be on how we want to do it. Because if we're going to do that, I think that it may create a problem on bad years, but, you know, maybe not. But their idea is to sort of build up to a certain percentage of our net budget that will always go into capital. So, which is great. I think, you know, maybe it becomes more predictable, but they also, so what they have in here is where you see in the red is just sort of what they're predicting is a funding gap on going that route. Where Andrew and I kind of looked at it and said, well, we know we can parse some of that out each year, you know, right now with ARPA funds, but also we do know that just the way we're going now, there will be free cash. So we're not too worried about these red numbers, but it's making that sort of commitment to get to a, you know, that budget, to that percentage of the budget that we're going to really dedicate towards capital. Let's see, some of the.
Scott, that line there which is general fund annual debt service, is that based, where, is that in reference to
what we're
funding these
paying.
projects, or?
Well, they should have that as part of their, I guess, predictions going forward, that, you know, this is how much your debt service would be if you're going to follow this plan. But I have to meet with them. I've got to give them sort of my review of what I've done with the department heads over the past week. We're going to tweak some of these numbers, and then we're going to go over sort of all of that and what their assumptions are, because I'm not 100% sure what their assumptions are. And that was sort of the conversation that Andrew and I started with last week was, okay, I get their philosophy on how to do this, but I'm not sure that if that's the way that this committee wants to go in the future. You know, that's great, but it's just making that commitment to do it. So once I've met with them one more time, either I am going to ask them to meet with this committee, or hopefully Andrew and I will have a good enough grasp on it that we'll be able to sort of explain it better. There's their net budget predictions. Again, I'm not sure what they're, having not reviewed this with them yet, I'm not sure, you know, what their assumptions are in these calculations, but it seems like it's probably just 3% increases. They have a tab with some nice charts and graphs. So this is the one that was up there, and again, I collapsed a couple of these columns that were just, you know, the project justification, basically, from the department head. And so what you can see in here is whoever, these were the 2023 projects we had done last year. They're broken down by the fiscal year. So the ones that mostly we've been focusing on this week was just what the FY24 projects were, whether, as you can see here, their priorities, whether they were ranked properly, if it's something that we absolutely have to do. And we also, you know, wanted to have that discussion with some of this, does it even belong in here? You know, like the town hall windows, I don't know necessarily that we have to do them this year, but we do have to do them. There is $100,000 in here for a town hall generator. We don't have to do that because we got a grant for it from Holbrook, so that's coming out of here. But there are other things in here. You know, there was a couple of them in here that weren't right, like this 23,000 is actually 230,000 to rewire traffic lights. Again, that's a high priority. Plymouth Street and Center Ave. So this is all projects, and this isn't saying whether, you know, for the most part, this is stuff that we're going to do, and some of it we may, as a committee or as a group, obviously, like, you know, we may decide we're borrowing for. If we were to do the DPW building design for $2 million, replace the roof at Woodsdale for 1.6, that's a placeholder that's going to move, because that's probably something that's in the future that would be done with, in partnership with MSBA.
In a pay-as-you-go system,
This is all projects in this tab. So when I go to the next tab, it takes some of those out of there, and those are the ones that we would be debt.
okay.
So this tab was sort of general fund total everything, general fund debt. Next tab is general fund existing debt, so some of the things that we're dealing with. Not really sure what this one was. Then we even have, just for the sake of having them in here, we did put sewer, our sewer funds and stuff like that in there, so. Again, we're pretty close to it being done. We have golf in here, and projects that we removed. This is stuff that, you know, I had talked about previously with that, with the Collins Center, on things that we just knew that didn't have to go in here right now. Smaller sort of one-off things that we can deal with later, or just things that we knew we had some other way of dealing with it. And I think on the, and then the other thing was like on the general fund total projects, we also had just stuff that kind of got pushed down to beyond, FY '28. And those were conversations that I had also with the fire department, because as you'll see, the fire department's not in here very much, but they do have a couple needs that'll be coming up and that has to go in here. They need an ambulance. We're hoping to maybe be able to use that out of our American Recovery Plan Act money, which would save, I think we were talking about 400 and something thousand, maybe 450,000 for a fully equipped. And then there'll be in future years, it has to be plugged in here. We also looked at, as this group remembers what a good job John Nuttall did with getting those engines refurbished. And he's managed to get a lot more life out of them. But they're not going to last forever. I mean, these were older engines. They did come out amazing. I think most of us probably saw them when we did the site walk. But they are going to go. So they have to be popped in somewhere around like FY '25, and then maybe again in FY '28. The ambulance is probably another ambulance in FY '27. So there's not a lot of things that I think are missing from here, but there are those little things. And then, like I said, the other big things is just probably, which is one of the biggest expenses in everybody's buildings, is usually the HVAC. And we know we have the problem here. I'm not sure what's going on over at the library. I've never heard them complain about it, but if it's a 20-something-year-old building, it's coming. So I think that I'll probably, when we had talked about this a bit last year, hoping that there would be some extra money in the library budget that they'd be able to use, much like I did here, to pay for an envelope assessment, but I think we have to do a little bit more than just the envelope assessment, meaning not just the windows, roof, walls, and I think we actually have to look at the systems, boilers and HVAC units and, general plumbing and, when was, if the bathrooms haven't been updated in 25 years, do we need to make ADA updates? Do we need to make just general water saving updates? Stuff like that. So I think I got to figure that out, get a number for that and get that in here, because it really makes a big difference. It's going to be a living document. Every year there's going to be the what ifs, the things that we don't know that are going to come up, and we'll have to figure out how they prioritize and pop them in here, and it may bump something else out, or something that might right now be a level 3 priority may all of a sudden become a number 1 priority too. But we're a lot closer, and at this point I'm very happy with the product that we have. I think it's much better than what we've been working with up until this point. So other than the fact that it's really hard to see when you print it, I'm going to try and break it out so I can break it out by fiscal year, at least on this page, and get it printed for you that way so everybody can see it. But I'll email it to you, can distribute it, and then you guys can blow it up on your laptops. But there will be changes over the next couple weeks. Certainly in time for us to make, we'll have FY '24 fairly solid in time for us to make decisions this year, going into our annual town meeting. And then some of those other things I think will probably get popped into FY '25, FY '26, and then the other, like I said, the ambulance, those things will pop in. Conversations with the police chief, he didn't really see anything coming his way. We do have some issues as far as some maintenance over at the police station interior, in the cells, but nothing crazy. But again, that building's 12 or 13 years now, so we want to look 10 years down the road. It's certainly 5-6 years down the road, we're probably starting to throw money at patching the roof. And we'll be looking at, you know, and that seems, you know, something also with the two schools that, you know, having talked to Jason Lynn today, Beaverbrook and Woodsdale. Again, you know, older buildings, older HVAC systems, probably not very efficient. I think steam is what they're using over at Beaverbrook, forced hot water, pressure systems over at Woodsdale. You know, these systems, they do become, you know, especially Beaverbrook, I think most of the pipes and stuff are probably under the slab that you probably don't want to cut up because God only knows what's in it.
I think they had an issue too, like with water and.
Well, the minerals in the water and the steam probably causing all sorts of
And I think there was some
Yeah, they had to cut it.
flooding to boot. Yeah.
issues.
So, you know, we're gonna use some ARPA funds though to have an engineer go in and take a look at that. They've got an estimate of about $16,000. And again, the best thing we can do is get solid estimates on what this work, when we're gonna need it. So we'll start with the Beaverbrook and then we'll probably do the Woodsdale also. And then the other buildings as we can. So that's it. Again, like I said, this is, you know, we're getting near the end of this. It's been a long process, but it's been well worth the time and effort that we've put into it, that the Collins Center has put into it. There's been a lot of back and forth with the department heads. And you'll be able to see, you know, there's a lot of different things that are in here. You know, DPW has, you know, grinding and paving of roads. And as we know, in some of the discussions we've had with DPW over the past couple of years, is they would love us to be a little more aggressive on the money that we put into road paving and road repair, because we're just falling behind. And Chapter 90 funds, even with the additional funds that they've been giving us each year in additional earmarks, it's still not enough to get caught up. So we borrowed to do it last year. You know, again, it's not something that we necessarily want to do every year, but we do want to make a commitment to funding it. I think, again, that's probably a good use of some of our American Recovery Plan Act money. And just so we know that there's $1.2 million or $1.3 million that was given direct to the town of Abington that we have pretty much at our discretion on how to use it. And, you know, we consider it revenue replacement, and we've been working with the working group on doing different things, things that have been identified in the master plan, upgrades to our town parks, upgrades to some of the town buildings, and sort of those things, little annoying things that we otherwise wouldn't have had funding for that we have to get done. There's $2-point-something million at Plymouth County. Plymouth County, as a actual working county, received ARPA funds direct. Plymouth County, much like they did with the CARES funds, allocated a dollar amount to each community that's a member of Plymouth County. So about 2.7 or 2.8 million is allocated to the town of Abington. Now, we can only use that in accordance with the rules that Plymouth County is holding us to, which are the same initial rules that the federal government put towards us. So it's not just at our discretion without following those guidelines. So they either have to be used for protection of our infrastructure. We used it to buy, so far, I think the only thing we bought was, and we're still fighting with them, is a street sweeper so we can keep our waterways clear. It's part of our MS4 permit requirements that we're all aware of. So we're, you know, I think we used maybe 500,000 to put towards PFAS and put towards the engineering, and then we allocated other monies, and we received grants towards fixing our water stations, our pump stations, to put in the new pumps and the new filters to remove all the PFAS. So we can use it to enhance our broadband. So some of this stuff we've tried to put through ARPA funds, because this is the improvements we did in this room will enable us to have hybrid meetings, should we have to go to that, but it'll also enable us to have more hybrid participation, should that become something that we have to do. We're allowed to use it for support of police and fire services, so we probably, hoping, we'll be able to buy the ambulance with it. Certainly, we can put it towards anything, like I said, water-related, or infrastructure-related. And then there's certain other things that, there's some other sort of buckets that it may or may not fit into, but it's very strict. And when we go through them, they have a independent auditing firm that's working for them that scrutinizes everything that we put through. Scrutinizes our requests, matches it up to what the guidelines are, and then asks us a million questions about why we're doing it, how it fits. We got a little bit hung up on the street sweeper. I think we got them over it, but then they look to make sure that we actually procured it properly and through federal standards, not just the state standards that we typically use. So it's a difficult process, but it's working. We were kind of holding off on really allocating a lot of that money until this project was complete. Because this is, over this year and next year, we can still use those funds for the next 2 years and up to the third year once they've been allocated. But I needed to know what was going to be in this plan that we could use those funds for. And there are some things in there, so that's the good news, that, as far as the funding source. Once we've allocated, and we're kind of up against the gun, we want it done by the end of the year, that we've figured out everything that we're gonna do with those funds. I don't want it to be an issue where the federal government looks back at us after January and says, look, you didn't use the money, you don't know what you're doing with the money, give it back. We want to avoid that. I don't want to be the guy that gave back $2 million. It's just, it'd be awkward. So that's where we're at with this. Again, we're in a much better place than we were. The 5-year plan that we had been working off when I got here, it seemed to be more of a reactive thing that, oh my God, this stuff's broken and we kind of have to fix it, and we didn't do it this year. And it just sort of stuff kind of moved on. And so I think this is a lot more comprehensive. But we'll see, like I said, I'll forward you this one just so you'll have something to look at now. It's going to change, not dramatically, but it's going to change. There's going to be some updates to it. And, Andrew and I will be meeting with the Collins Center to get better overview of it so we can give a better explanation to you. And then we have to decide as a group where we're going to take it. So that's it. No heavy lifting.
Scott, to your point about you don't want to be the person that has to give $1 million back, like, can this committee get a report, whether it's monthly, quarterly, like where we stand with these monies? We don't know. We hear it in a meeting like this, but we don't know how much money, ARPA money, we actually have.
Yeah,
and what
actually,
the
Andrew
plan
has
is
brought
for-
that up at these meetings before, very specifically with the amounts. But to your point, I would be happy to put it out to this committee, and actually, I don't even mind putting it online. I'd love everybody to know
Okay, yeah.
exactly where this
That'd be
money's
great.
going. But we have been pretty careful about whenever we can to just say what the money is, where it comes from, and what we've been doing with it. And especially, because we really haven't, we bought some police cruisers, the street sweeper. We've been pretty careful about holding off, but we will see in the near future, I think the citizens will be able to actually see the effects of it when they kind of see some of the infrastructure things that we're going to do, some of the cleanup that we're going to do, put some of it into roads. And again, the master plan had identified signage changes and enhancements to our to downtown areas and entryways into the town that just needed to have some cleanup, some enhancements to them. So we're going to take care of that stuff too. And it's again, we've already started doing some of the smaller things in the parks and in the playgrounds to make sure that the people who are actually out and using these facilities get the benefit of this money. So, but yeah, to your point, because I do like telling people where the money is going, so I have no problem.
Yeah, and how much we
absolutely
have
bringing it.
left. Like,
Yeah.
Is it accounted for in Vadar, the accounting system?
Probably, but it's a question for Andrew.
So I imagine that it would be, and so to that point, and Andrew, Scott, and I had spoken about getting access to one of our members, like a view-only access to Vadar. So that'll give us,
Is that your segue?
Insight. I skipped over one. but it was a good
Can I
segue.
had a couple, so this spreadsheet that we're looking at, these reports, is this designed and built by the Collins Center?
Yeah,
Or
this is,
ours?
no, this is they put this together for us. They worked with, like I said, again, they met with us, this is their template that they used.
So can I ask, so I'm the school department. Can you run me a report? Can you give me a report that just give me for the next 5 years with the school department?
Sure I could. Am I going to?
A little formula in there. Yeah. You could do that with that.
Filtered.
I think,
Right, but the way they have this broken out by year,
I
they
know.
made it complicated.
Well, no, it isn't it's actually just the way I would want it year by year.
But
I
let me
could
ask you
sort it
this, though.
within year.
I have something in 2026. I want to move to 2024.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy enough to cut and move it.
Yeah, why do that? Why not just add a column that says give the fiscal year, and then you slice and dice on
Well,
that?
I'm not interested in changing the format whatsoever, not to that extent, no.
Right, but what I'm saying is, as a finance committee, I'm gonna tell you right now, I wanna see this report run by the department. I wanna see the school department, I wanna see the park.
That's easy enough. I mean, I could certainly do a search and
Yeah, but
and
why,
straighten these out.
why do that?
But it's just a matter of making it into a, with the tabs at the
Table.
top, and you just click and it just shows school department.
Well, you can't do that with this.
Well,
It's
you
just
just set it up
Excel
as
file.
that.
Right, but,
You
so
can do
why
whatever you
can't we do it
want.
right now?
With a few
It's that
keystrokes,
easy.
you could.
Let's do it right now. Let's
You
do it.
need somebody who knows how to use Excel good,
Yeah,
not me.
yeah, that's what I mean. It would be.
Right, but that's
a
why
few
I'm
easy
saying the
keystrokes.
design of this, I don't think is gonna accommodate what you wanna do, Chris.
But I think the design is accommodating what Scott wants it to do.
Right, but it also has to accommodate what the finance committee wants, because we have to review, this is part of our responsibility.
I see what
And
you
if we
mean.
can't get a report, Chris has said this since I got on here, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but it's like, he can't get reports that he's wanted for years. Like, we can't do our job if we can't get reports.
I think any report that you've asked for, we've given, and we certainly will give you whatever you want.
Certainly more so last year. Last year was very good. In
And,
the past.
This report here just needs to be massaged in a different way that is.
That's all
us.
I'm asking for.
Yeah,
is-
so I mean, if it works for them, it works for them. If it's given to us, which it is going to be, then we
Yeah.
can make it work for us.
So you need not only a statistician, you need an Excel guy.
Well, fortunately, he is an Excel guy as
There
well.
you go.
Right,
You can do
but-
whatever you want with it.
But the concern you want is the integrity of the data when you start having other people start manipulating, moving things around.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to change data.
Because this report, I mean, we may only need, you probably could get this on 8.5 by 11, because we don't need to see all these columns. Just give it who's, got the most points, where if it's a priority 1, 2, 3, it's like something like that. But it's like, I'd like to be able to see, like, with the highway department, like how if they just look at the highway department, what's coming over the next 5 years.
Yeah, and that's probably gonna be pretty easy for us to do. But right now, I'm showing you the whole report as a draft
Okay.
to introduce it to you. What we do with it in the future, I think we can take these and parse it out any way you want.
Well, no, that's the only reason I bring it up, because you said this is a living document.
It will-
So
well, it will
We want
be.
to make sure that we.
But, yeah, it's not gonna be living for anybody here to make those changes. I mean, somebody.
Exactly, right.
Somebody, yeah, somehow we'll lock, if we have to.
Absolutely, right,
That,
yes.
the numbers for sure, unless, Andrew or I wanna change them.
Unrelated question, so moving forward, is the Collins Center gonna be updating this, or are they
No, no,
done and
it,
they're
they're,
responsible for
it's,
moving this
it
forward?
becomes ours,
Okay.
yeah. It's sort of, they work with us in the department heads to put it together, prioritize it. They make their recommendations as far as, I think, the strategy of funding it, and then they take off,
So like a new initiative,
and then they use us as a reference.
Okay. Any new initiative, we would be responsible for adding that and sort of allocating a priority status and all that, correct?
So my thought was, there would be a reestablished capital improvement committee that would be the keeper. Most towns seem to have one, and right now we do have one, it's just, it's made up, or it was made up of people on the finance committee and people on the board of selectmen and people on the school committee and a couple of at large, and it's really not a good way to make up the document. It shouldn't be, you're giving a lot of people a lot of bites at the same apple.
So I guess I had a
But
related-
based, so my thought was, is it would be a couple of, probably 2, maybe 3 folks independent of these committees or independent of any interest on here. Sole focus would be just to meet with the department heads on an annual basis and say, do you have anything that you need to update on that plan? And are your priorities still the same? And then a report will come to this committee, all right, we're on our FY '25 or FY '20, whatever budget. Here's what the capital plan is. Nothing's really changed. Or it might be, here's what it is, but this is what we found out, and here's some things that we might have to tweak and prioritize. But there'll be a keeper of this. Again, how they, you know, what we do as far as locking out the data and how we decide how the money numbers change, that's probably gonna be through Andrew and I. But that's kind of how I would envision this, with some sort of a capital improvement committee that's a small one. And what almost seems to be the best is if you can find guys who had been on finance, who don't want to be on finance anymore, but, you know, maybe Joe Rojos could say, look, we only need you for a few meetings a year prior to the finance committee meeting, you know, but those kind of people who already have some insight into how the finance committee works, I found in other communities that was what worked best. So, again, that's probably for more discussion and more discussion with the selectmen, since they'd ultimately be the appointing committee, I think.
Scott, if we were lucky enough at some point to have a town planner,
Could be this year, you never know. Let's keep-
this type of,
This wouldn't be on the town planner's plate.
no,
No, this is a financial document. This is something that would,
I mean, the, more of the work that leads into a document like this, knowing the HVAC is,
historically,
in this
any of the
building, in
planners
that
I've ever
building?
worked with wouldn't deal
No.
with this at all. No. Ultimately, what you would have is a facilities manager.
And that was, would that be, that was what I was gonna ask, would that be something that would ultimately be more cost savings probably down the line to get a handle on, you know, the systems and when they might need to be replaced, as well as
Yeah, I mean,
work with this?
right now, I would say it's not in the cards for the town. I mean,
Okay.
there's, the priority, I think, loud and clear from what I hear is a town planner. And just, if you look at the issues on Route 18 and how it's getting built out, or how it could get built out, or how we want to get it built out, what's going on in the Naval Air Base, if that does kick back up and ramp up with the new developer, and they need to change all the zoning over there because it's not going to work.
missed
Yet again.
opportunities too, that
Yeah.
we keep missing because we just don't have somebody
Yeah.
that can,
And, you know, Liz Shea has been doing some amazing work as far as, matter of fact, this is a grant that she got it. So we have someone over there who's great at keeping, you know, at moving that group forward. And I mean, as far as getting grants go and working on projects like this, we're good. But it's, you know, if you know, for the overall planning, and I'd love to have, you know, downtown business groups back, and someone to sort of, and that's a planner's sort of function, is to get them back together, get them meeting, not necessarily meet with them all the time, but to get them and find out and get feedback from them. What's going on in your downtown areas? What can we do to help? What is it? Why are your stores not renting, or why are they rent so low, or what, you know, what is the town not providing, or, you know, that's a big component that's missing that you would get from a town planner. And maybe we'll find it this year. You know, we haven't gotten anywhere near starting that process yet, but I do know, you know, we also have cries for a conservation agent, and we spend a lot of money. You know, it was brought up at town meeting on how much extra I spend on town council, because we don't have a full dedicated HR, and, you know, so to make sure that we actually follow procedures and develop procedures and adopt them. So, yeah, you know, The facilities guy would be great, but
Not in the cards right now.
not really, no. But I would say someday in the future, we would probably look to maybe do a shared thing with the schools. I think that's something, I've seen that model before. And we have an extremely good relationship as far as a working relationship with the administration, so that's probably a bigger possibility someday down the line, but, you know, those are a lot of talks and a lot of talks away.
And you mentioned this sewers in this building at a prior meeting. You indicated that that might be a larger project. Was that able to be patched?
It seems to be holding, yeah, they went in, they put a sleeve in there somehow internally. Everything seems to be holding up fine. I was having that conversation with Wayne today, so
Okay.
we're hoping that disaster averted on that one, but we'll see.
Scott, you mentioned the HR position before. Does Rockland or Whitman, do they have a HR person?
Whitman was working on getting a assistant town administrator that would also be HR, but then they lost their town administrator, so don't know what happened there. Rockland has a assistant town administrator who also does their HR. Duxbury had a full department. It's, again, it's one of those things, I mean, I can deal with it, I don't mind dealing with it, but it's, you know, everybody can only do so much stuff, and you want that's one of those things particularly that you have to be real careful to make sure you do it right, and not have, especially, you know, when it comes to bargaining and
Legal issues.
the legal issues that are involved with the bargaining and discipline, and, you know, there's a lot involved.
And how many FTEs do we have in town?
Probably, I think between both of us, probably 300.
That's us in the schools.
Yeah, and I would say on our side, probably 100.
Is that,
And again, you know, it's, you know, is it, some towns have some people who just do nothing but procurement, you know, and I do all of that. And that's one of the things, you know, again, I enjoy it, and I don't have a problem with it, and we can keep, it's just, you know, you can add that stuff on, but it's just, you gotta pay. And it's not, you know, at some point you have to decide how much of an organization do we want? You know, I think the town's run fairly well. I think things are going well, so, but it would be nice, is that a throat clear on?
Yes, no, it was not a comment.
well, because there was an interesting article in the Mass Municipal Association where out in the Berkshires, Williamstown, North Adams, and Adams, there was some grant money they got from the state, and they combined to hire an HR person to handle those three communities. And they split the cost based on the number of
It's an interesting concept.
A lot of those areas out there though, like, we have property out there that it's a call fire department and a call police department.
Really?
So it's state police that will come if there's a big issue, but if you're calling for the police, you're probably getting someone out of bed.
Yeah, this
In
was
the
an
middle of the
this is
night,
an
you know,
HR
it's-
this, I'm not sure what this is an
No,
HR
I was
position.
no, I was just saying, like, as far as the number of
Sharing of
employees
positions.
and, they probably are sharing a lot of positions in some of those towns, possibly. They're,
I think Barbara's point
Operations
is smaller employment roles for each of those towns, so a shared HR positions covering maybe less HR
There
than
must be
the
something
town
to
of
it though, because the
Abington.
The
state's
state
getting
is-
the money for it.
The state does have, and it's not specific to HR, but the state does have grant money for shared services amongst municipalities. We actually looked at, I had conversations with Rockland and Whitman on a shared town planner for a while. And Rockland decided they really just needed to do their own thing. And probably for the most part, we do too. If we wanted to go that route, it is difficult, certain services to share, but we've been doing it with,
veterans, we did
Animal
it for a
control.
while.
yeah, and I think moving away from that with the veterans agent was one of the best moves that we did. I think it really worked out well. I think any veteran here would testify to that.
I would testify.
I think we
You
needed it
can
at the
also-
time that we did it.
Right, it was
And
a
then we
cost
needed-
savings,
and then
and
we
that's
needed to
what
move
we
away
could
from
do.
it.
I think we did the same
When we
for a
were
while
able
with
to,
building
so.
inspection or wiring, or one of the inspectional type services. We were sharing.
I think way back at one point, you were sharing a building inspector. It goes back pretty far though. But, again, you know, there is money to help you get that going and get it set up. Mostly it's to start it off. It's not,
Right.
you know, it's not, they don't continue to throw it at your budget.
Right.
It's that sort of one stop, once to get going. And with HR, that's something that it, you know, I would think you'd be more successful with that because it's not unique from municipality to municipality where zoning is and, you know, personalities are if you're dealing with veterans. Maybe, certainly, planning is unique personality, unique per community.
Yep.
But, I think, did we talk about it with health at some point too? And it just, again, it
Shared
was,
nursing services.
yeah.
You can outsource HR too.
That
I
was
hear
kind of
ads
what we're
all the
doing.
time, yeah.
That is kind of what we're doing, is sort of, not 100%, but
Pieces of it, you know.
pieces of it are outsourced and
Yeah.
it's being dealt with through council and,
Yeah.
you know, it's working. I
But
think
there are
it's working
companies
good,
out there that,
but it's
for
expensive.
small companies. For
It's
small
expensive and
companies.
it's a risk to the town,
Mm.
because you don't have HR professionals handling HR issues. No disrespect, but.
No, but we do. I mean, that's what I said. I mean, I'm using council for,
Yeah, but there
the-
are outsourcers
they
that
only-
isn't using attorneys.
Right.
That they're large companies that do the outsourcing. You hear the
Right.
ads on the radio all the time.
But isn't that mostly like onboarding and payroll and stuff like that, those HR functions
No,
as opposed to
there's-
like grievances
Yeah, I think that
labor?
you can do that too, if you feel comfortable. But,
well, none of this was on the agenda, so
no.
I think we've strayed.
I've lost control. Lost control. Any other questions? All right, so the next thing we have for Scott, and then we can let him take off if he desires. So, if you guys remember, we had issued out new liaison assignments. And then part of that too was, especially as we go into budget season, a goal of getting in front of your departments prior to them actually coming here, so you can prep them or get questions from them, and then bring that over to the committee before they're actually here. And a large reason why I brought this up was because Paul and I had met with the school department prior to them getting in front of us, and I feel like it streamlined the whole conversation, not only for us, but also put them at a level of comfort that they could come in here confidently and present their budget to us. So with that, I had a conversation with Scott and Matt about the potential for us to, ahead of time, meet with Scott and those department heads when he meets with them. So we can have those conversations early on and get ahead of the game. Because as you guys know, it gets pretty heavy kind of December timeframe for those. So, Scott, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I was gonna try and open up I had a budget memo that we had sent out last year, just to kind of give you a reference on, and I wanted to try and find the email that I think we had sent out through to this, yeah, here it is actually. So this is kind of what Sonia had sent out last year, basically the schedule that we started with this committee, with the department heads. So prior to that, in mid-September, we sent a department head memo out just saying, that our VADAR system's gonna be open on September 17th. Get your budget into VADAR, and, we're gonna have the preliminary budget put together sometime early December and get it to the selectmen and then to the finance committee right after that. And we had dates of November 17th where, between the hours of 9 and 3, we had scheduled, 20-minute blocks for like planning and council on aging and building and board of health, town clerk. A lot of them changed, but so this went out in September. We kind of picked some days. And then we punched some nights. These were all your Wednesday nights, I guess, for January and February. we'll start it earlier, and again, I think Andrew can speak a little bit more to this next week as far as the timeline goes. But we can pick these dates in November where we could pick out, whether it's 5 different days that I'm gonna plan for, a few hours where planning, council on aging, building will come in one day. Board of Health, town clerk, IT will come in, police, fire, DPW will come in. And that's gonna be to sit with Andrew and I and review whatever they submitted for their budget. Now, if the liaison wants to be there for that, that would be a great opportunity, I think, for the liaison to meet with Andrew, myself. Andrew had mentioned, and I think he mentioned it to you guys, and I don't have a sample of it now, but what the budget books will look like that you'll get, look a lot better than what we've been working with, I think, over the past few years, and he'll give you a little more historical data in it. And I think, we can work with them to try and find out and parse out some of the stuff that you'd like to see in there, or how you want it broken down beyond what we'll have for our budget workbooks. But I think it'll make it a lot easier. But then I think what we could do is that initial meeting, I'll put that schedule out to you to distribute. If the liaison can make it, that's great. If the liaison can't make it but can make another day, we can try and, shuffle things around to a certain extent.
What we have done in the past, because we have done that in the past, and it was a little bit easier for some of us at the time. My kids were younger and my hours were a little different, and the meetings were held during the day. So I would meet my department head here that I was a liaison for. I particularly remember when Marshall first came on, and that was my first time actually meeting him, because he was brand new, was for his budget presentation to the town manager and town accountant. But what we did, because some people were available, the liaison was available, but if the liaison and the backup liaison wasn't available, sometimes somebody else might, from the board, that's not
Could
their.
fill in for it.
Right, not their, it's not their department, but they happen to have some availability or more flexibility in their schedule to be off during the day and go to something
Well,
like that,
And we will have the availability of Zoom.
which is a great.
So we can do the full screen share, document share, whatever, but we'll have the meetings in here. So if you can't make it here and you got to do it from your office, or if you can, if you say, if you can only pull away an hour, we'll try and accommodate it as best as we can to make it work. But, beyond that, we'll do whatever we can to help to facilitate that meeting, because I think it's important for the liaison. And I don't know if you do it, do you switch every year to year? So you don't always do the same department, or?
Typically.
Little bit.
Well, we decided that we would not switch this.
That works for me. Typically. More, I think sometimes, because especially when we have new members that maybe have only been here for a couple of years.
Or a couple of days.
Couple days.
Or a couple
hours.
days. But they get an opportunity to kind of go through being a liaison for each department. So that's why we kind
Okay.
of always switched, so that, because I think you do get a better understanding of the department when you are a liaison for that department. You kind of get to know it a little bit better, so,
And this won't replace, the department head's still coming in here.
right, to do the whole
really,
presentation.
To meet and do the whole presentation and answer questions of everybody. But I always found it helpful in my past, just to have that kind of one-on-one. And then it also gives the department head someone, if they've got a question, or, if something's coming up that they're, they may come to me and say, what do you think about this? And you're like, oh, you have to run that by the finance committee. Why don't you talk to your liaison, see what they think?
And sometimes just by being a resident, and you're listening to, you have a resident's point of view also,
Yeah.
not just a finance committee member. So sometimes you can pose that question that a resident might have after something like that. And then the department head is a little more prepared to give that information, because they
When
know
they
that's
come
a
up,
question
yeah.
that's gonna come up.
And I just want to reiterate that, Scott offered it up as an invitation, as an opportunity for us, so by no means, an expectation that you do that, especially, we all have day jobs, and depending on
Yeah,
the time of the meeting. But just know that the opportunity and the invitation's out there for that.
Yeah, and like, again, Andrew and I will kind of work on a preliminary timeline on it and some dates. It looked like we started meeting with them in like November 17th. I would suggest that we'll be earlier than that for our meetings this year. We don't want to be up on top of, on top of it. I think we were having some long nights and searching for more information near the end. It'd be nice to give you everything we can as early as we can and, hopefully not have to meet multiple times during the week if we can avoid it.
Scott, when you meet with these department heads, is it zero-based budgeting, or do you take last year's and build off of it?
So we'll ask them, we'll say, look, give us a level, like this year, it's level service budget, so contractual obligations and only what you absolutely need.
Okay.
So if there were increases, obviously, because whatever the contracts, the employment contracts require, and then, if just to use for an example, police department, obviously, we expect there to be an increase in their budget, probably for fuel, unless we consolidate, for gas, for the vehicles, and certainly if the price of ammo has gone through the roof. So, they use a lot of ammo and it's expensive for training purposes. So we probably
Glad you
see.
clarified that.
Yeah, I was thinking as I was saying that. But again, so we would probably expect to see some increases in them to explain that. But when I say, we're just looking for level service across the board, the opposite, I mean, if I thought we were, 2 years ago, I would say, give me a level funded budget and don't, other than contractual obligations, don't find a way to make it work. But zero-based, no, I've not ever experienced a budget like that. I hear it's kind of a nightmare.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Have you done it here before?
We have not,
Well,
or not
In-
while
in
I've,
a- in
not
a-
while I've been on.
in
the
a
committee.
roundabout way,
Yeah.
when we didn't have, when the finance committee was actually kind of doing the budget.
So you did
What-
your own?
what-
Oh, you did it
yeah.
before? Really?
Well, it wasn't really a zero-based, I guess, but it was,
I mean, zero-based is tough, and it is an interesting exercise, one that I'm not looking to put myself or the department heads through. And I do remember when they interviewed me, the selectman, I think it was probably Kevin, I want to say it was Kevin Damasio, who asked me if I would do it, and I was like, no. No. And I kind of thinking to myself, I probably should have said yes to that, I hope this goes right.
You got it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to lie, because I really did not want to do it.
Well, I only ask because if we kind of year to year set a baseline, and we had some number of long nights there. If we're level servicing anything, it's like, I'm not sure why.
Why is everything increasing?
Well, no, it's just like, but just give us what's changed, what are the priorities, like, for that department? Because for us to go through, it's like, well, your electricity went up this, or your postage went up that. Like, we've already established that the year before. That's where, I'm trying to, the value that the finance committee is adding, if you've already gone through it, I don't know why we're asking questions about that sort of stuff. If we're saying, the year before, that budget was okay. This year, we're gonna question it? As a finance committee, I just don't
I
know
think
if we're
we
doing
question
that.
it when it goes up, when there's an increase.
Right. But we didn't do that
Or it
last
goes
year.
down.
We do scrutinize it to a level where it's like, I'm not sure where we're adding value to it, other than torturing the people that are in front of us.
Actually, you know what, I'm not,
There is,
I don't know if anyone took it that way.
Sometimes there are things in the budget, just because they were in the budget last year, and nobody knows why they're there.
I think we did run a few of those last year,
I-
specifically in my budget and some of the other budgets, like, yeah.
I think as a concept,
Yeah.
every once in a while, doing a zero-based budget as an exercise to try and weed out those kind of things could be useful, but like you said, it is an awful lot of work
Right.
You already said no.
I-
You
Yeah.
wouldn't do it.
to do, and I think,
I wouldn't
I think to Paul's point or question, I think we largely look for the things that are changing significantly, or the things that maybe we were in our first year on the committee last year and had the question but didn't really ask it. And this year you're like, no, I'm not gonna sit on that this year. I'm gonna ask that question.
But there were some things over the last couple of years, and I think probably a lot last year, where we did increase hours. We increased hours in the planning department, we had increased hours with the Council of Aging, we increased hours, I think, over at the library. So there were things that, there were a lot of things that we did discuss that, we wanted to add, and we wanted to, we called them enhancements of services. I think that's what the term I used at town meeting. So there was a lot more to scrutinize last year, and just because I asked for level service budget, there's still gonna be department heads who are gonna come in here and say, I need this, and, it's not in there, but I'd like to have it in there, and,
Right.
that's gonna happen, so those questions, and they're questions that you're gonna point to me and say, well, why'd you take that out? It sounds like she really needs it. And then it's gonna come back to say, well, I can put it back in, but
Well, it's like the town planner, like,
that's it.
we talk about the town planner, but we never put it in the budget, and it's like, and
It was in there when I got here.
It was in there at one point.
Yeah,
But it
I
didn't.
took it out.
It didn't last through COVID.
It was day one of COVID, so.
Also, I think
Nobody was coming to
sometimes we pick up on things, Chris has picked up a few things where
Yeah.
numbers aren't adding up, or, sometimes we pick up something, even though it may be level service, when we're going over it, we look at the budget and, there's a huge jump in that number, and it's because somebody forgot to back something out, and so then the budget looks a little bit different.
I think that came up a
Just
couple times, yeah.
We look at year-on-year expenditures too, based on the previous year.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice thing that you'll see this year is you'll have a lot more, or
Yeah.
as much more historic information that you can look back at, and you'll be able to see why is there such a big jump, or, I think this case, we may be looking and say, well, there's a bit of a decrease, but it's still a jump when you take those, consolidated budgets out of it. But,
I think it's important too for us to hear the department heads give their budget, not necessarily, sometimes the town manager will say, I want a level service budget. And I prefer to hear, because we don't need to be what's the word I'm looking for? We don't need to be in agreement with the budget that is presented to us. There's sometimes that we aren't.
We've had some-
Consensus budget is usually what we try to get there, and we're usually, at least the past several years, we've been able to work together with the town manager, but sometimes you hear from a department head that, I really need this, and then you look at the town manager's recommended budget, and that's not in there. And maybe, as a committee, maybe we feel that's an important thing that should be in there, and maybe something else is in the town manager's recommended budget that we don't feel as strongly about, or we don't think the townspeople would feel as strongly about. So I think it's good to be, to kind of have our own voice as a finance committee, as opposed to, it's great to come in and try to agree with your budget, but we should
But
have
we're not here to rubber stamp your.
yeah,
Right,
see, I mean,
that's
and
what
at
I'm
the end of the
looking
day, yeah, that's what, at least my experience has always been, is to try to come to that
Right.
consensus budget.
Yep.
That it isn't, I'm gonna give you a draft budget, and you guys all saw what that draft budget looked like on day one last year. It was a train wreck. And it took a while for us to massage it and get it where we wanted, but ultimately, I wanna walk in there with a consensus. And again, if you guys, as the finance committee of the town, are really hard felt about something, then, we're gonna come to terms on it. So, at least that's my goal.
yeah, I mean, I just would like to be able to have a 1 or 2 page when we sit down with other department heads as a finance committee, and you can say, these are my priorities, this is what it looks like, year over year. Because for people at home, they're not gonna watch this. They're not gonna watch the 32 hours of finance committee meetings to figure out, like, what's
It was fun when it was on Zoom, but
Right,
yeah, it's not as
but
good.
like, if you had a summary, it's like, we could post these things out there, it's like, this is what this department's looking for. How do we break, this is what their priorities were, because, like, to sit through all these meetings with people, it's difficult, and to, like I said, we get into the detail, and I think there's a public service that these departments get to say, listen, this is what we do. I don't think we do enough promoting what these departments do and how effective they are. So if you look at the senior center, whether the schools or whatever, it's like, this should be a way for them to promote, like, this is what we deliver to the town. It's good service, whether it's John Snow, the DPW, the schools, or whatever. It's like, so they can actually use this. But we also have this summary, we're saying, listen, if you want to go to more detail, here it is. This is what this department does. I'd just like to see us be able to deliver that.
We used to
people.
have an audience,
Yeah,
you know,
really?
so maybe, yeah, oh, yeah.
I used to get 3 or 4.
It was all
sometimes
Margaret's
5 at
family.
Whitman, but never
We would get, when we were having department heads come in, not just for meetings like this, but when we were having department heads come in, if the police department, the fire department, the schools we did on a Saturday, but when we were having departments in, the senior center, the council on aging, we would have an audience. People
Advocates.
knew that, knew
Yeah.
that was the
Right.
department that they wanted to hear, they supported, whatever, that, you know.
Was
Maybe
it on AbCam at the time?
it was. I don't know how much maybe we need to advertise more that we're, you know, this is, on such and such night, the police department will be in, or on such and such night, the fire department.
Get it on Facebook.
I'm not, but we also, you know,
I-
back then, a lot of the selectmen would come to the meetings during budget, just to sit and listen. Sometimes they had questions that they,
So I will say, I'm surprised by how many people actually do watch all the meetings. I've had people coming up to me over the last several years saying, oh, I was watching this meeting and you were talking about that. I'm like, really? But to your point, Paul, about sort of the summary, a lot of times when we are meeting with a department head, they'll start off with that. And we sort of encourage them to
I'll
give us kind of a,
I will ask.
sort of a state of the
That's a great
department
idea.
and a, here are the priorities, and then we'll go through like detail by, like line by line or detail by detail. But those summaries are very helpful.
right, yeah. Because I feel like we spend a lot of time in the deep end of the pool.
Yes.
Sometimes we miss like what people really know. It's like, well, what am I getting from the Council on Aging?
Well, we could put together a template too, like a one-page template.
Right.
that-
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
something that we can,
that's
Yeah, I
something-
mean, if you can
We
whip
could-
that up, I'll send it out when we send out the budget memo and say, look, and, you know, well, we typically kick it off with the department head meeting, and I'll let them all know, as I let them all before, it's, that, you know, I think the committee showed last year or each year that I've been on here, that you know, you're working with these departments,
Mhm.
and you've worked with them, like I said, every year that I've been here, so, they should put effort into it, and they all do, and they put it like they do with everything else, so, I've had experiences in other communities where it's a much different adversarial, situation some years, so.
they used to come in and have more of a presentation about what their department did, or.
I did that my first year, and the second year, they're like, please don't bring the PowerPoint.
Yeah, oh, there was PowerPoint, there was
doing that.
handouts, Jack Pistorino had a whole thing,
Oh,
which when
yeah.
I was new, that was very helpful. You know, some of how the Proposition 2.5 works, and how, you know, like, and what, all the things that his department does, you know, we need to do the things that you just don't realize, that the Board of Health may be covering, dead animals in the middle of the road that need to be tested for rabies, like, you don't know that the Board of Health is going out and
I did a lot of gross stuff.
picking those up. Like, well, how would you know that?
right.
Unless they came in and gave a presentation and told you, like,
And
give
I
you
think,
a,
I think it's a great opportunity for them to do
You
that.
know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna
We
give
have
you
a
that.
list of the
All right.
We'll
liaisons.
work as a committee to figure out that template.
We do,
and get it
yeah,
to you
Dan.
soon, so
No,
we
it's
can
a
get it
great
to
idea.
them.
Yeah, we didn't know you or Sarah were gonna be on when we made the the list of the liaisons. We can potentially rejigger it
And
if we
so,
want to add you guys, but.
so I mean, multiple points about awareness and, you know, getting the community more involved here. I will start posting on Facebook, Life in Abington.
Yeah, and anything you want, get it to Tony. Have you met Tony? I'll introduce you to Tony. She's in my office. She takes care of the webpage and Facebook and Instagram, coordinates it. We also work with a consultant who's helping us with that stuff. So as far as getting stuff like that out, when you, your agenda, when you send the agenda, make sure Tony's copied.
Okay.
She'll get it up on the web, so that your actual, anything you need,
I'll get that.
as far as that goes, work with her, and especially, you know, you'll see that her and I and Sean, as we get closer to the meetings, the town meeting, we start doing a lot more promo too. We really picked it up quite a bit last year with a web page, with, you know, specific for town meeting and town meeting info, and trying to get on AppCam, just to let people know, you know, we're meeting, we're working up towards the meetings, so what's gonna happen at the meeting. If you wanna be part of the meeting, you know, if you wanna put a citizen's petition in, this is what you gotta do.
Yeah.
So we'll start ramping all that up at the same time. There was a page dedicated to this committee too, right?
There is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
FinCom page.
You know, so anything you can do to send that link out, or anything, again, from our end, let me know and let Tony know. She's happy to do anything like that to get stuff out, so.
Yeah, and I got Dan hooked up with Wayne to get
good.
it
Yeah, I
on
get
there,
access
and
to that
he's,
section of the website.
Oh, good.
I can-
he's,
I can
he
hang
knows
that
how
stuff
to
up.
You know how to
create
get
events
stuff up
and
and.
post agendas and
Sure
stuff
do.
now, so,
Sure do. All right, two more items, and then
and
we
I don't
can
have to anymore.
close our business here. So, I just want to reiterate again, special town meeting. I'm going to post the link to videos moving forward to Facebook, and I'm going to post, you know, a reminder to folks, like, let's get the quorum at least, because I don't want to sit there and practice everything I've got to do for 70 people to show up and, you know, us be way under the 150 we need.
Calling people, get down here, please.
Yeah.
So if you guys can, you know, do whatever you can do to kind of help that.
I think, and I'll push it with, again, I had mentioned this to the Open Space and Rec Committee, but I'll reach out to them again. They're meeting, I want to say next week before this meeting, so I'll meet with them to get them to push the fact, you know, that we have some conservation land in
That's
here and
important
some open
stuff.
space, and there's a real lot of people in this town who are passionate about that, so hopefully that'll help get some folks out too. I mean, if they don't come, we're just gonna do it at the annual anyways, but it would be nice to do it
Yeah.
now. Especially because the sooner that we do that, and sooner we update our open space and rec plan, the sooner I can, or Liz Shea can start applying for grants that will help us build trails and stuff like that in this area, so. That'll be the message on trying to get that group anyways.
And the meeting's Tuesday,
It's a Tuesday night.
27th.
Mhm.
Yeah.
7 PM?
Last agenda item for this evening, so conversation around adopting the finance
Can I
committee.
just ask, from a procedural standpoint, do we have to pass over where it's on the agenda, the Vadar accounting? Is there a,
I think we can just say that we're gonna take it up.
I don't think we have to pass over it though, but I think we can take it up at a later meeting.
yeah, I just want to make sure we're doing it, you know.
Yeah,
I don't want to set up the new chairman.
Yeah,
and say-
well, I mean,
Because
good question.
I don't know what the rules are, because it's on the agenda, but we didn't address it.
And I think it was mentioned.
I did,
Yeah,
I did
at the
speak to it,
beginning.
as
Okay.
far as the, I mean, do
We're good.
you want me to say what I said?
No,
just in
you're-
case?
No, you're good. Took it out of order. but,
Paul
you know,
needs to
you're
pay,
all right.
Paul needs to pay attention better.
What's that?
Paul needs to pay attention better.
So just to reiterate for folks, so the Vadar accounting system, we're looking to get view-only access for our finance committee analysts or statistician, right? So we're working on different names. We're kind of playing with names here,
I think we should get them a shirt.
which I think, you know, will help Andrew in preparation for setting up the documents how we want to see them prior to.
It'll
Yeah.
help Andrew, it'll also help us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have have him as a conduit with Andrew. I think it'll make your meetings a lot more
He was
productive.
really excited about it, right?
I don't like going into other people's systems.
Great.
Well, you'll- it's
We picked the
you all.
right guy for the job.
But that's all right. I'm just nervous.
So, last item here, and actually, let me ask, do I have to go in order?
No.
Okay. Paul, you throwing me off, man.
But don't you, I thought you did. If you go out of order, you have to mention that you went out.
Yeah, I think you should, I think if you're gonna skip it, probably procedurally, it wouldn't
Skip it
hurt just to
altogether,
say,
yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
table this, or,
Yeah.
I mean,
I did go out of order just for the sake of.
certainly if you had an
Conversation.
audience here, it would be a different story, probably.
Especially
Well,
if
we
Sean
do have
Tyler
an
were in
audience.
the audience.
All around us.
Usually we stick to order if we have a timeframe, times are listed because it's a department coming in.
I see.
But
Yeah.
if we're trying, if Scott has to leave, then, and his item might have been, just happened to be listed like fourth,
Right.
he might jump ahead
Or,
because.
or for people who might be wanting to attend to talk about a specific item,
So if
we
we
would-
had like
we
a
would
time. if we had
try
made
to
it-
stick to the time that was on the agenda, but without the times on the agenda, we kind of
Okay.
can go at them as we.
That works. Okay, so the last piece on the agenda that we have not covered yet, conversation around adopting the Finance Committee Handbook from the Association of Town Finance Committees. So this was suggested to me as an agenda item by Paul. I had sent over the attachment that he forwarded to me to everyone.
Is that, did you get the updated one, or is that still the one that I sent? like, a
I
long
have the
time
one,
ago?
I actually just took it out of my book before coming to the.
I went
Tonight's
on the
meeting, I meant to
site
grab
today.
it.
It's.
Oh, so you
it's-
got the new,
it's-
is it the same, or is it?
It's the
a
same
new-
one. It's
Oh,
still from
okay.
2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and I mentioned just because, coming in onto the finance committee, I think it's a great guide to give you some understanding. And the reason I mentioned is adopting it is if we adopt it, then can we put it on the underneath the FinCom page? Just so if someone's wondering, like, what does FinCom do? What are their responsibilities? And I don't even know for myself, it was interesting, like what our role is, by state law and statute, and that, the budget really is ours. Like when we presented to town, we're that legislative piece versus, Scott and the Board of Selectmen and the executives. It's like we're presenting it on behalf of the town. And I just think it gives good guidance, because we don't have a policy, a procedure manual, which I don't necessarily think we need. But it's like, I think this is, because if you look at all the different professions between attorneys and brokers and accountants that have contributed to this guide, I think it's good for us to have as, what our role is, and I think it defines it very well.
It's nice, because it's also pretty comprehensive as far
It
as it
is.
explains what other roles are.
Yep.
How the roles play together.
Together, yeah.
It gives some good recommendations, but it plainly says these are recommended practices, and
Right.
may be different in your community. You may do things differently. But I thought it was, I think it's great, and it gives little explanations, great glossary, so I would definitely love to see it on the web too, or even if we, put the whole thing on it, or if you wanted to have broken down into glossary or terms, because one great thing, is just, a lot of people don't have a clue what we're talking about if we're talking about.
Some of the terms, some
Yeah.
of the, which I was gonna say, Marty probably just because he's been
He knows
around
it,
and
yeah.
he's been asked all of the questions. But if you have a question, I will guarantee you that somebody else, either watching or some townsperson, or citizen would have the same question. None of the questions are dumb. If you're not sure about something, everyone's had to have some part of something else explained to them. In the beginning, I remember some of the reserve fund stuff, wrapping my mind around the ways that some of that worked, and so if you have a question, speak up.
Thank you. So far, I'm following along just fine. I have no other questions.
I think what I'd like to do this year too, not at the next meeting, but probably at our sort of kickoff meeting for the FY '24 budget is have, like, maybe Andrew and I just kind of spend 15 minutes or so going over, like, break down what our cherry sheet is and what it means and what's on there, and break down the budget workbook and how we come up and actually fill in the numbers on the budget workbook and where we get those and what it means to set a tax rate and what the tax rate is and new growth and what new growth means and, you know, all our little breakdowns of revenue. But it wouldn't take us long to do it.
What's
Put it up on the $1 million
What's
screen.
chapter 70, what's chapter
Well,
90?
yeah, what's chapter 90, what's chapter 70, and then
Where are the rest of the chapters?
the other tab.
How assessments work compared
Well,
to
that's what I
your
was gonna say.
taxes.
The other
your-
tab
your-
too, the
your-
assessment
yeah,
tab.
The assessments and your taxes going up, but the assessment
well,
going
there's
down,
always a
the
good
assessment going
question.
up, and why does, you know, it's a lot
Some of those we may wait
information.
for Yolanda to come in and do a
Yes,
presentation
yeah.
part of that. But I would like to, at least at the very beginning, go over some of how that first initial draft budget gets created and where all that information comes from. Not just for this, but it'd be great, you know, it'll be on the screen and
Yeah.
on AdCam for the rest of our lives in perpetuity, so. But I would suggest we'd probably wait till the kickoff meeting to do that.
Any other discussion around the Finance Committee handbook?
Since they are recommendations, does us adopting it not allow us to deviate should these, a unique situation come up?
Yeah, I was gonna ask a similar question. Does it bind us in
It
any way?
is specifically meant to be a guide,
Right.
and it's not, as Paul said, we're not adopting it as a policy.
Just adopting it
We're
to
adopting
use it
the-
as
as a
a
guide.
As a
tool.
guide, yeah, that's why I didn't say
Tool.
approve, we just adopt it. I don't even know.
And
We have
I
to take a
don't,
vote.
Do we have to
I don't think you would
feed
find any
to
strong
feed it if we
recommendation in
adopt
there to say anything that we wouldn't
Yeah.
want to or have to do anyways. I don't think there's anything in there that
Right.
says, do not don't borrow more than X percent of your,
Right, no.
you know, that's not something that you'll find in there.
No.
There may be recommendations that you set a
limit.
limit that your
within,
community
or-
is comfortable with.
Yeah.
But it's a good guide, although there was, when I was on Whitman FinCom, there was somebody who thought it was the Bible. So it is good to establish that it is a guideline,
Right.
and it's not something that's set in stone, and it's not something that we actually, you know, because it is different for every community, so. But I think it's a great resource, so I do recommend it.
So as such, I will make a motion that we, as the Finance Committee, adopt the handbook as a guideline for the Finance Committee handbook from the Association of Town Finance Committees as a guideline for how we conduct our business as a finance committee and as individual members of it.
Are there any seconds to that?
Second?
It's Paul seconds. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on where do we actually stand on the policies from last year? I don't think we ever formally adopted
No,
them, right? We're going back to the selectmen.
If, you know, when we do move forward with them, but there is quite a bit, not just on some of the comments I heard from this group, but some of the meetings I've had with other finance directors, there's probably a lot of changes that we would want to make and have discussions on them again. So
Okay.
there are policies that have been adopted 2016 maybe, that are technically still in effect. I'm not sure if you have a copy. I think I sent a copy at one point, but, so, you know, they're out there. We'll pick it up again and have discussions, but I mean, there were some really good points made, and I want to make sure we address them, but there's been quite a lot going on in the past year, so that just, you know, it's on the burner, but not the front burner.
Okay, fair enough.
And those are financial policies for the town, not
Not
for
for the
us.
committee.
Correct.
The committee will have to work with them, but. it will
Right.
probably
Whatever we
process
adopt
with
would be
them.
sort of the parameters which we would want to operate in, and if we didn't, we'd want to have a good reason why not.
Okay.
So still in discussion. My initial intent with this was to give the committee a week to review, because I want to make sure everybody is like genuinely on board with this. So if there are folks here that want that extra time, make sure you do oppose. But I'm supportive of this, so I just want to make sure that everybody's bought into it. So with that, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? And abstaining would be Greg. And motion passes. Very good, that's exciting. Okay, are there any liaison reports? I don't think so. I know that there are no minutes to review. There is a bill for Matt.
Read that.
What?
What was that?
You get a bill?
You got a bill? So correspondence, there is a piece of mail for Matt. I gotta give him there.
Then, if it's got Matt's name on it, then he can pay it.
Probably your MMA dues.
Yeah.
So if it is, hand it over, I'll pay it.
And Russ did let me know that he'll have the minutes ready for next meeting, and he graciously sent Andrew the template.
On a related note, how's the,
So far, nobody has applied.
because I was honored to be appointed to one of the only meetings I missed as secretary, but
That's usually what happens. You can't miss a meeting around the time that we're reorganizing because it's like a rite of passage.
It is a good life lesson.
There is
That is not the meeting.
the
to
sort
miss.
of a nuclear option, it would be that we have someone do it and they would do it from the,
Recordings,
yeah, it's just not optimal because it's very difficult. Sometimes the audio doesn't pick up or, you know, if the camera's not necessary, if it's behind me and
You don't know who's talking, but
said
it's
what,
it's
who
very
made the
hard for a
motion,
member
so.
of the committee, as we get into the actual budget talks, to try and
To
take meeting
notes
minutes and
and
participate and vote and really have your head in the game.
So.
It's definitely,
Well, I'll push it a little bit more. Like I said, I would want somebody here, but,
We could get name placards so they can see on the video who is.
make
we
it.
have name placards.
Do you?
We
We do.
did.
Well,
we
somebody
did
needs to make
yes.
you one. Do you not,
Remember, you
What
guys
happened
did,
to our
you
name
guys were
placards?
meeting by
Aren't they,
Zoom
like,
when I
under
started
the-
for 2
They
years.
were in
okay,
that, they
so
were
we'll
in that
give you
room.
some slack. Yeah, they're in a box.
They were in a box
In the
in
closet, I
the
think.
Abcam closet, but
Because
there's
I agree with
probably-
you.
There's
I-
probably some old names on there.
But somebody must be in charge of making new names, right?
I guess.
Yeah, yes.
I think it went through,
Or-
I
yeah,
think it
there-
went,
There is, and I know exactly who that
You
person
know
is.
who to go to? Marty will be the liaison to the name tag maker.
To the name tag maker.
Good first task.
We'll have it. I do believe there is a little bit left in the budget that we could use for that.
Or what about even, just thinking, anyone up at the senior center that you can get, what's the program?
Oh, the work-off program?
Yeah, is
I-
that
I-
something
yeah,
that,
I-
Senior rebate.
thank you, yeah, so a senior rebate,
Work release.
if
Close enough.
somebody
where I
that's
thought you were going
retired,
with it.
or they can get a certain amount off of,
Mike
you know, they can,
Dukakis working on it.
will you explain how that works?
Yeah,
You
so,
don't need wooden ones, you just get those paper ones that fold in the middle, write your name.
He's still,
so the way the senior
Every-
rebate program is.
Just everybody
is
get
they
an
can work
image
up
for their phone, and
for,
we'll hold our
you know,
phones up.
town department. A senior can,
What do you do with conferences?
if they're eligible, which means, you know, they, a certain age and a certain income level and own a house in town, can work X amount of hours and get, I want to say maybe up to $500 or $600 off of their taxes, off their real estate tax.
Yeah.
this might be a good
But
opportunity
the
for somebody
program's
that-
like midway right now,
Mm.
so I don't think it lines up with this. But I will put it out there to, down at the senior center, because maybe, you know, I was hoping, because, you know, the months that it was, maybe somebody looking for a little extra money around the holidays, something to that effect. But I did, I sent it to the school department, asked them to put it out to everybody, so all town employees had it for a couple weeks. We got 0 response, and then it's been on the website. Tony usually gets stuff on Indeed also somehow.
You're selling us as a very fun group to be taking notes for and everything, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we took the opportunity to hang out with the finance committee on Wednesday evenings up until 10 o'clock at town hall. Where we can discuss the heat and AC that doesn't work in the Cotter Room. I'll throw in snacks.
I was just gonna say,
That's right, I
maybe we
keep
need to
forgetting the
serve
chocolate.
cookies. Yeah, town council showed up without chocolate.
I know, last town meeting.
It's kind of a big deal.
It's the first time I've been to a town meeting that they
Ever.
didn't have it.
Greg showed up with chocolate?
Without it,
Oh, he showed up without it, no.
yeah,
okay.
we've always had,
It's COVID sitting everywhere.
It was like delayed reaction COVID, because the first couple of years of COVID, we had them.
So that's the, all the agenda items for this evening.
All right,
We'll make a motion to adjourn.
second?
Motion to adjourn, Barbara seconds. All those, or any discussion?
When is our next meeting?
Oh, that's a good.
I think
Yeah,
it's
so
next Wednesday.
our next meeting will be next Wednesday, same time, same place. I'll send out the agenda, along with the liaison assignments again. I'll get those posted. Is there anyone here that cannot make it already? That they know they cannot make it next Wednesday? If you find out you can't, please let me know. We want to make sure we have enough. We will need to make recommendations on these articles in that next meeting. They're due by the weekend.
It's a
And
possibility I'll be late, but I'll make it at least at some point.
Okay.
I will reach out with numbers, get you an updated copy of this, hopefully tomorrow or Friday.
Okay, awesome. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Right.
All those opposed? And Greg abstains. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.